a bit of what we've been doing in the UK with a project called Boattr, and talk about Towpath as urban commons, but also the sea as a surveillance commons. I'm going to cut this one short in order to be able to accommodate a little bit more of sea watch time, so to say. For those of you who are interested in the Boattr UK, there is a small Wi-Fi thingy running with the SSID Boattr. You can log in and actually read up on what we've been doing so far. There's also a small image hanging there. And you can just browse at your own time, so to say, the Boattr.uk project. Quickly, Natascha Sturny, my partner, she has been documenting most of the images you will find on the box, the Boattr box. So that's Natascha Sturny. So for all the images, that's kind of her work. This is the image you see behind there. It's the canal network in the UK. So we've been living on the cut for about 3 years, while we have been running a kind of a mesh network, kind of access point. The UK is kind of, they have kind of, I call it legalized gypsy system, because you're allowed to move around every 2 weeks on a boat without having to have a permanent address, so to say. So you can actually get a license, costs you about £700 a year, and then get moving across the UK. A friend of mine nicely called it one level above homelessness, because you kind of move around in these yogurt pots. That's the cheapest way. Probably pay around £1,000 to £3,000 and off you go, and then another £700 a year, and you have your home. But of course those homes, they are not that safe. These are kind of the 26 tons to 30 tons narrow boats moored in a limehouse basin, and this is just when you need to get ready for winter. You need to chop some wood in order to be able to actually heat your boat. That's King's Cross, and that was our boat inside, living together with a cat who had her own entry level, so to say. And that was us then at the last station in Coventry. I was kind of researching there at Coventry University with the idea of using the canal network in order to mesh with all narrow boats around our boat, but we never made it that far, because actually I got cut short and moved or reallocated to Malta. We're still talking about it. There's a project called the Memory of the World. Maybe some of you have heard about those grey libraries. That's kind of a fantasy. It would be great to actually distribute such grey libraries over such an old network with mesh setup network boxes, but that's where it's at. And that was our last station at Kingswood, nearby where Shakespeare was actually living. So that's quite idyllic, contrasting to where we are at now in Malta. So there's two parts. I'm going to narrate the first part around Boattr UK, and Tamino will be narrating then the second part, which we refer to as Boattr.eu. The initial Boattr project started with, is it all right like that? Did I get some feedback? Maybe here's better. Oops. I shouldn't have moved it. Okay, I'm not going to touch it. So the initial Boattr project was created by a friend of mine, Antonius Galanopoulos. He had a narrow boat which he renamed, I think, In Crypto We Trust, or I think the final name was Emacs. And I'm just going to quote him on 2 points. A hardware-software research project into the management of off-grid autonomous sites. It collects and processes data from environmental sensors and provides remote monitoring, control, and automation. Optionally, it can also provide a host of other peripheral services that can run on the small embedded. Oh, all right. Is it better like that? On the small embedded computer wireless AP, internet connectivity, VPN, remote access, Tor gateway, file storage. So very important. Do you think this one is better?
Yeah, you can try this one.
Okay, yeah, that's better. Great, thanks. So very important is electricity, battery life. That has been something we've been looking a lot into. We've been running batteries of solar systems, and we have been installing them. Okay. And that's kind of the prototype running on a beagle bone on Anton's boat, which is actually sensing these kind of data. You see here temperature, so we have inside temperature, outside temperature, the stove, they're very important for the winters, and also kind of the living room. Then battery health, this is kind of alright, under 12 volt it would be dead, what the solar panels are giving us, and then of course connectivity, because often we don't really have connectivity on the canals, because often we are kind of off-grid really. We don't even receive any kind of mobile networks. And then of course the amp hours, so solar, lights, and the whole ring. This is then how it's graphed. You actually see this is kind of where we get up in the morning. The solar panels are picking up around 7, and then someone has opened the fridge, so it needs to cool, and then you actually get all these data more or less. And that has happened over 3 years. We installed it on our boat, Quintessence, but there we really kind of were interested in actually getting it hooked up to the mobile network. This was a 3G tethered device, and I don't know if that is ever anywhere else than the UK, but in the UK you could actually have unlimited data on the 3 network, which was rather amazing. So we could really share yeah, that's great, thank you very much. So we could really share. That was so confusing for me, I'm sorry about that. Good morning, everybody. So we could really share a lot of internet with our peers, basically, who were in the last Kingswood Basin around. And I think we really kind of nicely ripped off 3 with a lot of gigabytes. They didn't even complain. There was quite a lot. But anyway, that's the access point, and that's our nice charger, and here you have the solar system coming in. Now the next thing is 3. That was the Boattr, and there's the MAZI zone. And the last one is an art project before I hand over. It's run by James Stevens and Mark Gavitt, and that is actually the box which you see on top there, which was our collection point. Over 3 years we kind of collected a journal over our journey, and you can actually read about all of that. It's a simple Raspberry Pi and the system running of an SD card, which is now being published as a computer book with OpenMute. Here the references are Winchester's Nightmare, which was one of the earliest references of computer book we could find, which basically is a book which you read and it deletes itself, so it's a self-destructive kind of a piece of work. But our main inspiration really, that's probably for many of you here in Berlin know about it, the WISE 7 Incompatible Laboratorium Archive, which I kind of refer to as one of those books we really were inspired by to create computer books. One of the first ones we did was about a year ago, which was called After Video, which dealt with the notion that we actually wanted to produce something academically without having only to write, but also to publish audiovisual contents. We did that with Mute as a concept of assembly on demand. And that's now work in progress. The work in progress, you can see it here in the installation. Just visit the Boattr SSID and you can actually browse. The last one, which I want to quickly mention, is France. We installed a last project which was kind of a recalling Sputniks pinging around using ham radio. And we connected several boats. The main boat where it came from was in Austria, in Linz. It was called Eleanor, which is kind of a residency project boat where you can actually do all sorts of strange things, mainly with electricity, but also other projects around gardening have been running on the Eleanor. So I'm just going to quote Franz here quickly. In honor of the first radio artists who are using the signals as material for art, the 7067 kilohertz stands for independent information communication bypassing the use of the internet. We do not want to specify the content of transmission, rather we want to consider the act of sending the signals an act of solidarity in the post-internet future present. So that's the box, also running of a Raspberry Pi, an antenna which is going out. We just put it on top of our charger and had a GPS receiver there in the engine room window, and then you just see the antenna going, well, that's the antenna, but then we just extended it with a wire over our solar panels, and we had only managed to really send out 2 signals. I don't know why it didn't work, but then that was the end of it. Basically, we moved away from the UK, but that was kind of the 2 connects we managed to do. The other boats are the Stubnitz. Probably some of you know that in Hamburg. There is one in Amsterdam. I don't recall the name anymore, but then also Eleanor in Linz, which is sending out image. And I do like this notion of the harbor, or the Hafen der Sehnsucht. So here you see in the visualization of the Eleanor, and if you go all the way down this small blob, that's where we're just going to go now, and I'm going to hand over to Tamino to actually explain Boattr EU. It hasn't reached Malta, that's where we are now, but I get over to you, Tamino, and we'll actually be discussing now Sea-Watch.
Yeah, Adnan, thank you very much. Yeah, thanks for having me, and thank you for cutting your slot down to the half so I can have the other half. Today I'm trying to give you an overview about what Sea-Watch is and the situation in the central Mediterranean and the problems we are currently facing or facing since a while. My name is Tamino. I'm supervising the surveillance project with our aircraft we have with Sea-Watch, and I'm with Sea-Watch since 2016. So what is Sea-Watch? Sea-Watch is an organization for civilian sea rescue. We operate with a ship and a reconnaissance aircraft on the central Mediterranean because people are still forced to risk this dangerous passage, and because EU denies any legal entry routes, and we are now for already 3 years doing civilian sea rescue. Also, we try to build up political pressure on those responsible for this situation we will talk about now. So how is the situation we are looking right now? Well, it didn't get better in the last years. This lovely boy group here, for instance, is a proper example of the anti-migration politics in Europe at the moment. Matteo Salvini and his new government suggested, for example, racial segregation of immigrants and Italians in railway wagons, so are quite forward-thinking, backwards-wise. So times of a humanitarian European policy are quite a while over. At first, Italy reacted with sea rescue, sending a naval fleet to the central Mediterranean with the focus of rescuing migrants and boat people on the move. They saved more than 150,000 people from distress, which cost them some 100 million euro. But after 1 year, they asked the European Union for support, and in the same time, European Union was accusing Italy of building a bridge to Europe and being responsible for people starting this journey. So what followed was something like Sea Rescue Light, a Frontex Operation Triton from November 2015 onwards, and from spring 15 onwards the EU military Operation Sophia. Both of these operations do not have sea rescue in their mandate. They are there for combating smuggling and combating migration. So there's no mandate for rescue anymore. So Fortress Europe is sealed since that for those who do not have the correct documents, meaning all who are on the flight from war, hunger or whatever are facing fences, cannot go anywhere but through the moat, Jews crossing over the Mediterranean, which is extremely dangerous and often deadly. To put that into a perspective, let's try some numbers. We have the 13. So this year in January, 1 of 13 people died while crossing the Mediterranean. So if we apply this to this group, we have easily 6, 7 people of this group here in this room, if we would do the crossing, dying. And here's also again addressed to those who believe that those people would do this voluntarily, that they are only economic refugees. They should perhaps remind themselves once again of what this risk means and whether one really believes that people take this risk without necessity. 1 out of 16 was the chance to die while crossing the Mediterranean in April 2016 when Sea-Watch started its work. In the following months of 2016, it dropped to 1 out of 32. There are many different reasons, and it all differs from month to month depending on the rescue capacities and other reasons. But as well, 1 out of 16 was and is absolutely unacceptable, quite simply because these people are not victims of any natural disaster. We are not talking about an earthquake, we are not talking a tsunami, we are talking about a human-made problem. And in principle, the European Union would have the means to end this situation so that no one would have to die if people simply had the opportunity to escape any kind of distress situation with legal transport means like ferries, like airplanes, and so on. But as long as this is prohibited and not the case, as long as there's not even a proper sea rescue mission, we just said we have to take it into our own hands. And that's why in 2015 we launched a do-it-yourself rescue mission. In the beginning we were Harald Höppner, entrepreneur from East Germany and for a long time GDR citizen. He experienced for himself the restriction of his freedom of movement, and that's also why we ask ourselves the simple question at the beginning: what is the difference? 138 people have died at the inner German border during the entire period of the Berlin Wall, and that is brutal, and we do not want to trivialize that in any way. But why am I telling you this number? Actually, for comparison, over 1,800 people drowned at the European external border, only in the Mediterranean Sea, only this year, 2018. So we are not even talking about a longer period. This is because the Nobel Peace Prize winner, the European Union, is forcing people like this family here to port such completely unseaworthy old fishing boats and use there to cross the Mediterranean. Because there's no other way to apply for asylum in Europe than to risk your lives before. So we said to ourselves and them, this can't be it. So we bought our own an old fishing boat that was completely unseaworthy, but converted it into a useful rescue ship. Our name there, as you can see, Sea-Watch, was chosen for a reason. We are not only with sea rescue, but also with the watch. So the initial idea was to just be another unit out there, spot boats and monitor what is happening, relay this information to the authorities, and just work like a telephone box. And we wanted to make people aware what is actually happening and make this situation public. This is something we did from the very beginning. Here, for example, when we practically hacked a German TV show and did a minute of silence on the talk show, didn't please everyone, as you can see, the Swiss nationalist Roger Knöppel, but we cannot make everybody happy. Anyway, the team continued. They brought the ship to the operational area of the coast of Libya. That can be seen there. In the middle you have Tripoli, the 12-mile zone of the territorial waters, and we are patrolling some 20, 30, 40 miles offshore. So in that area we were looking out for people in distress, and actually we found them. Here you see a situation in August 2015. In principle, this is a very key experience for the Sea-Watch crew, because in the first time we really reached our limits for two reasons. We had 500 people to take care of in this situation, simply overloaded with our 23 meters fishing boat. Secondly, we were confronted with dead people, not because they drowned, but because the boat was for several days drifting on the Mediterranean and 2 people died of dehydration. So we learned some 3 lessons out of this August 2015 experience. First of all, we needed more political pressure. It simply cannot be that these people are forced to board these boats because there is no other way, which is why we have packed some 120 members of the German Bundestag into an original refugee boat of the Mediterranean to let them at least feel a little bit and remind them of what their policy of isolation actually means. Second lesson, we needed a better and simply larger vessel where we could also provide better care for medical treatment and also accommodate a few people for some hours as the state actors withdrew more and more. We had also to take more people on board, sometimes even transport them, accommodate them for more time. So that's why we bought the Sea-Watch 2. And the third lesson, we said we needed aerial reconnaissance because it cannot be that there are boats drifting at sea for 1, 2, 3 days without anybody recognizing, because in these 3 days in August 2015 we had been also on sea, but we simply didn't find them because the area is just too big. So this was beginning 2016. I have a very short video I want to show you. So here we are in a rescue situation. You see, situation is calm, everything is fine, and then all of a sudden the tubes of this rubber boat burst and collapse, and we have from 1 second to the other a mass of people overboard of some 30, 40, 50 people in the water. Luckily in this situation no one died because we were in time and we could provide life vests to all the people before. If this would have happened before we could distribute the life vests, we would have spoken about a shipwreck with a fatality in double-digit area. So here you can also see one of the accuses that we are rescuing people who are not in distress because the boat is still intact and not a shipwreck. So actually what you see is those people are, in the moment they depart Libya, a distress case, a maritime distress. It's not about if the people are in the water or not. They are simply overcrowded, they have no navigational means, they have no communicational means, they are only passenger on board, no crew. So we are talking about a distress also when the boats seem to look fine. So we had the opportunity to give them life vests before and they didn't drown. And also what you could see in the videos, they have been 2 of us, 2 speedboats, so 1 of us and 1 of the organization Jugendrettet with their ship Juventa. Here you can see the Juventa on their first operational day in 2016 in July when they took more than 400 people on board. The cooperation with them worked perfectly. They did a great job and saved thousands of lives. And same goes for many other organizations which had followed our example and also sent ships to the Mediterranean for rescue at sea. In 2016, there were 13 ships from different NGOs doing sea rescue. But now, 2 years later, the Juventa is seized for more than a year now in Italy, and 4 organizations left with 6 ships because of the criminalization. And also in this moment, you see the ones who are not stopped or seized, they are also not operational because the situation again worsened. And Malta in the moment is arbitrarily impounding 3 rescue ships without giving any legal reasons since end of June this year, so for more than 3.5 months now. So nowadays often not even 1 vessel is operative because it's extremely hard to maintain all the stuff and to resist against the criminalization. So In addition to this, also all the state actors in the beginning of 2018 withdrew from the from the search and rescue area, so we have literally no vessel patrolling the area in the moment. So what happened in the last 2 years? As part of Operation Sophia, the EU started to support and train the so-called Libyan Coast Guard. Here we see such a unit of the Libyan Coast Guard in October 2016. In this incident, because of their unprofessional behavior, more than 30 people died. We were present before the Libyan Coast Guard, and shortly before they arrived wanted to start giving out life vests. By their very stupid and bad maneuvers, they destroyed with the boat one of the tubes of the rubber boat, and we had a mass people overboard situation, as you have seen in the video before. There are several reports about collusion of the Libyan Coast Guard with smuggling networks. There are many reports about the situation in Libya. Amnesty International is reporting, the United Nations are reporting. The Foreign Office of Germany described the situation in those refugee camps where the people are brought after the Libyan Coast Guard is intercepting them and pushing them back to Libya. They describe the situation as concentration camp-like. So what we are talking is the European Union is training and equipping different militias who collude with smugglers in many times to not perform search and rescue, but to intercept migrants heading towards Europe to push them back to Libya. In the same time, European Union decided to criminalize humanitarian work, so we really have to fear being put to jail for rescue at sea. In the moment, 10 crew members of the Boattr are accused in Italy of facilitating illegal migration with profit, despite the fact that all the search and rescue cases were coordinated together with the Italian Maritime Coordination Center, which is the authority in charge of coordinating. And those 10 crew members face judges of 10 to 20 years in prison for simply rescuing people at sea. At that point, we like to say again that it's not really the case that we want to do some Italy bashing. They took the biggest load in the last years and were in the beginning the only ones who responded, but they have been left alone by the European Union. Yeah, we were almost quite thankful when the far right-wing extremist of the identitarian movement joined in the search and rescue area, because it was again quite clear who like the good ones and the bad ones were, in addition with who the incompetent ones were, because in the end themselves they made it into a distress situation and had to be assisted by one of the sea rescue NGOs. But aside from that, more false accusations were made up against the search and rescue NGOs, claiming that we work with smugglers, that we do not comply with laws, that we want to destroy Europe, or that we bring empty boats, like after the rescue, back to Libya so that smugglers could use them again. It was mostly easy to prove those accusations wrong. As you, for instance, can see here, some overdo it a little with the destruction of empty refugee boats, and false accusations themselves were also nothing new, but politicians started to use those arguments no matter how made they up. So here, this gentleman, for example, talked about one of the accusations against NGOs, that we use light signals to stay in contact with the smugglers at the coast. Funny thing, that is just impossible simply because of the curvature of the Earth. So either Mr. Kurz believes that the Earth is flat, then that could have worked out, or he just did not care about the fact that what he was doing was defamation and propaganda. Here we have a German right-wing politician calling us smuggling organization, so we made quite a lot of friends already. These strategic framings, these toxic narratives, permanently damaged our image and made our work way more difficult, no matter if all accusations were unfolded and have been refuted. Luckily for us, there are, on the other hand, amazing people from all over Europe who support the work of SAR NGOs in many different ways, with donations or with very specific work. Like, for instance, the team of Forensic Oceanography, who with their investigations unmask made allegations. So this work is really priceless for us. Priceless as well as the commitment of our volunteers, even left alone in the rain by everyone else, and even though the work gets more dangerous from year to year, we are now out there for more than 3 years rescuing lives at sea. So with their help, we were able to rescue more than 35,000 people since 2015. What is important to me to stress here is that we want to resolve this situation. We do not want to be at sea to rescue people, but we want to find solutions that nobody has to risk his or her life at sea. So it's quite obvious that a political solution is needed. And for that, the European Union has to do that. So this is somehow the point where we try to target it, because in the last years also more than 60,884 people died. I will jump it a little bit. So this one is our current aircraft, the Moonbird, for aerial reconnaissance. We first had bought an ultralight aircraft, the other one you saw before, equipped for search flights, and had flown it from Tunisia. It was not working out from there, it was politically unwanted. So we have now, since Easter 2017, this Moonbird, a single engine propeller machine, which already did only in 2017 75 missions, and were assisting in the rescue of 20,000 people in only the last year. So this helped us a lot coordinating rescues and spotting different distress situations. So of course we are not only doing the search with binoculars and radar. I will jump a little bit to this one. There has been in the last weeks a big mobilization in the civil society, also not only in Germany, demanding the release of the civil fleet's ships, demanding a European rescue mission, demanding the abolition of Fortress Europe, demanding legal and safe passages. So this has currently a huge influence on the narrative about the Central Mediterranean Sea, about sea rescue, and is really pushing us to do more and really pushing us to continue. Yeah, so thank you very much for the chance to talk to you, and yeah, I will be around for the next hours a little bit more if you're interested to learn more. Thank you.
We have a few minutes for some questions if anyone has something they'd like to ask. No? Oh, yes? Okay.
Hello, is this presentation online or visible anywhere else?
From the live stream. Yeah, so as far as I know, not this presentation, but the live stream is online, right? Yeah.
Anyone else? Yep, okay. Just for the live stream, I use the microphone.
I was wondering if you could explain what happens to the refugees once you bring them back to Europe. From what we've seen with the Aquarius, are they allowed to stay, or?
Yeah, difficult to say. I mean, I touched the point already of this topic of economic migrants. We have different national laws regarding who's allowed to stay and who not. We all might have different opinions on that. As Sea-Watch, we always say that everybody taking this risk, escaping a situation, we do not want to judge the situation that people are escaping. So for us, all reasons escaping are valid ones. And for sure, we are not asking for anything if we are rescuing. If people are in distress, they are just people in distress, no matter of the papers, of the ethnicity or religion or whatsoever. But we know that, for instance, the people which got rescued by the Lifeline in June this year, and some 50, 60 people are still stuck in Malta. Others were distributed among the states who joined in voluntarily. Many of those still in Malta got their deportation papers already. So we try, as our crews are stuck in Malta, we are not allowed to do any sea rescue. We try to connect those people to local lawyers in Malta, try to provide legal counseling and this kind of stuff. So also there many struggles are ongoing, where I believe that the movement currently all over Europe is a very important one, because it's not only about sea rescue, it's not about port of safeties, but rather about like creating port of safeties everywhere, creating sanctuary solidarity cities where everything is connected, right? Like hiding people from deportation, giving people a lift who are hitchhiking through Europe, and all this kind of stuff is very connected for me.